For 50 years, Dr. George Madinat dedicated his life to healing children. Now, he faces an unexpected battle. A massive water leak has ravaged his home, and his insurance company, which was meant to be his lifeline, has made the situation far worse than he could imagine.
There's water under the marble. That's not good.
No, really, no.
Today, we'll learn about the fumbles, cover-ups, and deception that have turned Dr. Madinat's life upside down. In the rolling hills of Diamond Bar, California, Dr. George Madinat built his American dream. Born in Jordan, he came to the United States in 1971 with nothing but his medical aspirations. After training at Tulane University, Dr. Madinat settled in California, opening his pediatric practice. For nearly 5 decades, Dr. Madinat cared for countless children, driven by a passion that started early in life.
Well, I love children from the time I was young, and I always wanted to be a doctor.
As his career flourished, so did his family. Dr. Madinat and his wife were blessed with 5 children, who in turn gave them 11 grandchildren. In 1986, the Madinats found their dream home in Diamond Bar. Over the years, this house became the heart of their growing family.
The home is your past and your future. You look at pictures around you, the chairs around you, the kids were raised here, were born here. We have our all major occasions in the home.
Like many homeowners, Dr. Madinat maintained comprehensive insurance coverage, seeing it as a necessary safeguard for his family's future. However, he could not have anticipated the challenge that lay ahead. On New Year's Eve in 2022, Dr. Madinat and his family discover something strange while celebrating the New Year holiday. There's standing water on the floor in his living room near his Christmas tree. Shortly after, his family notices
Rainwater was gushing into their home through a window in the living room and also at the base of the wall. They then took all necessary steps to clean up what they could inside, and they tarped the exterior to prevent additional rainwater from entering the dwelling and causing additional damage. They then promptly reported their loss to their insurance company, Amica Mutual Insurance Company.
According to their website, Amica is a trusted and reliable insurer with a self-reported streak of exceptional customer service. In fact, Amica publicly states that their customers always come first.
I was talking to one of their representatives. He told me, Dr. Madinat, believe me that in Amica, we take care of our people. We rather pay the claim than fight it. I swear to God, still these words ringing in my ears.
Dr. Madinat calls Amica. They ensure they will take care of everything and send out their vendor, Disaster Cleanup, to investigate and mitigate if necessary. Disaster Cleanup shows up the next day and walks into a room with wet towels all over the floor.
You would think that their priority and their protocol would be to test for moisture in the floor and the walls, but what they do is they put their meter on the wall, they take it all the way down to the baseboard, and they stop right there.
He said, they told me, stay away from the floor. I said, who told you that? He said, I was told to stay away from the floor.
This is where things start getting complicated and frankly, weird. I'm going to break it down as simply as I can for you. After its inspection, Disaster Cleanup reports to Dr. Madinat that there is trapped rainwater in the walls of the house. They don't, however, report any issues with the living room floor, despite there being wet towels strewn everywhere.
There was standing water on the flooring, and a qualified mitigation vendor and Disaster Cleanup, they are qualified, would do a thorough moisture assessment to determine the extent of water damage. And one of the first places you look is on a floor that had topical water on it.
And now might be a good time to mention that the floor is an expensive marble that runs continuously throughout all 3 levels of the home. When water damage occurs, part of the mitigation process is to remove the water to prevent any more damage from occurring. So Disaster Cleanup creates and sets up a containment area to dry the walls.
You have to create a seal to properly contain the area. You set up your dehumidifiers and your air movers, and you basically dry down these walls. Disaster Cleanup sets up this weird phone booth looking thing, never makes contact with the walls. What this ends up doing is it ends up mixing the humidification within the containment and outside the containment, causing damage to the insured's paintings and murals throughout his home.
Amica ends up assigning and flying in from out of state an experienced and highly qualified large loss general adjuster to this claim, evidencing they knew full well the magnitude of this loss.
General adjusters are like the highest level of adjusters that an insurance company staffs. They flew this general adjuster from Kentucky over here to Southern California. Why would you do that? unless there's obvious exposure, meaning unless Amica knew full well this was a large loss.
So 1 month after the loss, Amica's general adjuster inspects the site with an engineer and third-party water damage expert. And during that inspection, the walls get tested for moisture, but neither Amica nor the engineer ask for someone to check the moisture in the floors. And to top it off, the water expert uses thermal imaging to show how wet the walls are, but again, chooses not to check the floor. What Amica does instead is issue a check for $15,000 and ask Dr. Madinat to get his own painting bid due to the custom paint in his house. Dr. Madinat knew this was not correct, and he asked that Amica evaluate the flooring damage. It took Dr. Madinat 3 months of pleading for assistance to finally get Disaster Cleanup to come out and test the floors.
Disaster Cleanup in, I believe, March of 2023 comes out, and this homeowner finally convinces the tech to put the meter down on the floor.
Nothing, George.
How about the floor? I said, I wanted to put that indicator on the floor.
Because he's worried that they're wet and no one is basically helping this man out.
The technician, while insisting it's not wet,
But there's water under the
No,
granite?
really, no.
finally puts the meter where Dr. Madinat asks him to put it, and boom.
There's water under the marble.
20%, yeah.
The meter is going off, and finally, the technician acknowledges, yes.
That's wet.
So this is some 2 or 3 months after the loss occurred. Now suddenly, Dr. Madinat is feeling something's going on here. Amica is not being honest with me.
This causes Dr. Madinat to lose faith in Amica and forces him to seek outside assistance. He retains Allied Public Adjusters Incorporated to represent him in the process. Allied Public Adjusters are insurance professionals that are experts at investigating complex claims while advocating for policyholders by assessing and presenting property damage.
In the church, a guy by the name of Michael Zait, I was complaining to him, I said, I have this issue with the insurance, they're dragging their feet. They're getting me crazy. He said, go to Allied. I'll give you the phone number of Raj.
When we got involved, we confirmed the floors were wet. So I picked up the phone and I called Disaster Cleanup, the owner, and I asked her, what's going on with the floor? It's wet. The feeling I got from her on the phone was that this is a subject that we are trying to avoid.
Allied investigates further, finding additional areas of damage overlooked by Amica and Disaster Cleanup.
I get in there the first day, I look around and I say, hey, we're standing about 10 feet off the ground here where this floor is wet, which means there's a room underneath us.
They asked me, all of a sudden, said, what is underneath this floor? I said, there is a basement. I said, basement? Come show it to us.
We went downstairs directly under the wet flooring area. Sure enough, we look up and what do we have on the ceiling? Water staining and mold propagation.
We draw their attention to this fact, they don't care. Allied puts an estimate together using specialty bids because this is a custom home, as you can see. Insurance companies like to use a software called Xactimate.
If you aren't aware, Xactimate is the industry standard estimating program used by insurance companies. It's a useful tool that helps standardize the estimation process. However, Xactimate is not necessarily designed to address the custom features of a home of this caliber. This is why Allied acquired specialty bids to supplement the items that weren't appropriate for Xactimate. So the estimated claim is submitted to Amica in May 2023. Despite initially extending coverage based on their first engineer's assessment, Amica suddenly changed course when faced with the true value of the claim. Amica demanded access for a new engineer to re-verify the cause of loss. This request was highly unusual and unreasonable, considering that their first engineer had already confirmed the cause of loss and Amica had accepted their findings. Dr. Madinat, although well within his rights to refuse this redundant inspection, ultimately decided to comply with Amica's demand. To be clear, Amica is supposedly trying to verify the cause of this entire loss 6 months after it happened. So, in June of 2023, Amica brings out its new engineer. This engineer essentially verifies what their expert said, and the adjuster openly confirms that all of the damage is covered. This was all relayed to Dr. Madinat, who was relieved that his nightmare was finally coming to an end.
Amica's general adjuster tells us point blank, right in the middle of this house, I agree with your estimate, it does not offend me, and I will do whatever I can to match my Xactimate estimate to get as close to your estimate as possible.
He did tell me that even though he agreed with Allied's estimate and all specialty contractor bids we submitted, his management required him to put the estimate together all in Xactimate. How are you going to write an estimate all with Xactimate on a custom home like this?
He says that Amica has given him uber authority to manipulate the software to get his number as close to ours as possible.
He said he would have Amica's estimate to us within 2 weeks. We then sent the general adjuster and Amica an email memorializing his commitments.
So case closed, right? Dr. Madinat is made whole and his house is restored to pre-loss condition. No.
2 weeks came and went, and we didn't get an estimate. It wasn't until August, 2 months or so after the inspection,
We end up getting a call from the adjuster saying, hey, by the way, management took a look at this, upper level executives, and they decided they're not going to pay dollar for dollar.
when I spoke with the general adjuster, he was apologetic, told me that his leadership rejected the estimate that he submitted to them and forced him to make changes to it. Amica's estimate was some $700,000 less than what was agreed to.
So how did Allied know Amica's new chopped up estimate was arbitrary? Many things. One, Amica's adjuster openly told Allied that Amica's management was interfering and that they had advised him to change significant portions of his scope. These statements were documented by Allied in emails to Amica. 2. Amica's estimate still paid to remove all the contents on all 3 levels of the home, even though the estimate stated that they were going to do only 2 levels of the home.
The first level of the home in Amica's new estimate was completely omitted, illogically.
Which doesn't make any sense because the damage happened in the middle floor, and that same flooring runs up the stairs into the top floor and down the stairs into the lower floor. So they're paying to go up the stairs, but not down the stairs.
It appears that Amica was sloppy in removing line items from its adjustment, leaving the evidence of the prior agreement, which included all 3 levels of the home. 3. The agreed estimate reflected a 9-month repair timeline.
Every estimate has a section called general items. These are items that apply to the entire estimate. Typically, you would alter not only the line items per floor, but you'd also alter these general items to match the overall estimate. In our case, we had put in to remove the personal property from all 3 levels, temporary toilets and hand washing stations for 9 months. All these things stayed as 9 months in their final estimate. That means that the original adjuster put in for this 9 months, but somebody chopped it out and just didn't care to go over those general items and change those things.
Allied was confused by the estimate, so they went back to question the general adjuster about his arbitrary reduction of the estimate.
We went back to the adjuster to see, okay, how are we going to work this out? And the adjuster, we find out, is no longer employed with Amica.
Not only did he leave Amica, he actually left the insurance industry. And that's actually really weird because from my understanding, he comes from a long line of adjusters.
Amica refused Dr. Madinat's request to be furnished with the inspection notes and communications of the Amica adjuster. Amica had the audacity to hire a new construction consultant 9 months after the loss to put together yet another estimate. They then shockingly request yet another inspection with their new consulting contractor.
For 6.5 months, Amica had unfettered access and complete control of the property. We met with the general adjuster and reached an agreement. It was memorialized, and then suddenly they are requesting access for a new contractor to come out to the property. When we asked Amica to answer reasonable questions, they refused to produce documents that legally Dr. Madinat is entitled to. And instead they hire a lawyer to try to intimidate and bully Dr. Madinat.
When you put a law firm between an insurance company and the insured, it means it is bad company. Just like that, straightforward.
So when we started challenging Amica, they advised that they're going to retain a consulting general contractor. But the desk adjuster slipped and told me that this contractor needed a conflict check before he could agree to take on Amica's assignment.
A conflict check is a process that lawyers and some professionals use to ensure they don't have any conflicting interests or relationships that could bias their work on a particular case or project. When an expert insists on a conflict check before accepting a case, it can be a red flag. It suggests that they are more concerned about potential legal issues down the road than providing an unbiased assessment of the situation at hand. And the fact that Amica's consultant, Pete Fowler Construction, specializes in litigation construction raises questions about Amica's intentions.
Let me be clear. You don't need a conflict check unless your aim is to create a conflict. These experts are supposed to be objective, not hired guns.
It came as no surprise when the construction company claimed that the damage is worth only 10% of what Amica had already paid. This was done without the benefit of a site inspection.
They claim that it's worth 10% because that they supposedly found this matching material, which in insurance, if you find a reasonable match for the material, that's all you owe.
Which is a bold statement. You needed an inspection, and now you don't need an inspection. And you've determined sight unseen that you have this matching material. Okay, we want it. Give us the match. We want to see it. But then Amica comes back and says, well, we think we have a match. So it's this shell game that Amica is playing right now with Dr. Madinat, and it is a shame.
Amica admitted that its newly appointed contractor had not located matching tiles. And unfortunately, that's where the Madinat family find themselves now.
I feel wounded. I feel deeply wounded because my life hasn't been the same.
Throughout its involvement, Allied has been trying to get Amica to see the error in its ways and do the right thing.
I love people. I trust them. I trusted Amica. I have been hurt and wounded deeply by the delay of resolving my issue, and I want to live in peace. So I appreciate it if they resolve this issue and they gain my trust again in them.